Welcome everyone to a regular Board of Selectmen meeting for August 1st, 2022. Call the meeting to order. We've got a quorum present and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Both Selectman Schaefer and Selectman Lowell have conflicts tonight, so neither will be able to be here. Conflict of interest: if at any point during the meeting a Board of Select person finds they have a conflict of interest with an agenda item, just to please let us know and we can discuss it. Joe, any adjustments to the agenda?
None, Madam Chair.
Zooming in, do we just have Tracy?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make sure we aware of everyone who is present. Review and approve meeting minutes. We're going to have to bump the tax commitment meeting minutes to the next meeting because we don't have the third member present who was at that meeting and can approve the minutes. So we'll move on to the July 18th Board of Selectmen regular meeting minutes and motion to approve.
Motion.
Sam's motion.
Second.
And Ethna seconds.
I ripped the Band-Aid.
Are there any suggested corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Under, we will pause for public to speak on a non-agenda item. Mark, you're our only public.
No.
Okay. Moving on to boards and committees, we have got the meeting minutes from the July 6th Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing. Moving into section 7, we've got consent items, and the first item is a liquor license for the Portage Tap House.
Was this a renewal or new?
Yes, renewal.
Yeah, this is.
It's a renewal. This one expires August 4th. The present one expires August 14th. It's
Perfect. I make a motion to approve the liquor license renewal application for Portage Tap House.
Ethna's motion
Second.
and Sam seconds. Any questions or comments? Mark?
Yes, at your first June meeting, you approved a new liquor license for the Portage Tap House to a woman that lived down on the Bemis track, that said she was 100% owner. That must have turned out not to be true. She must have anticipated being 100% owner. And I'm just trying to figure this out, but it didn't pan out. So will you need to vote to revoke the liquor license that you issued her at your June meeting?
Joe?
Madam Chair, I would recommend voting to suspend that license that you put in place previously.
Okay.
Basically, that's what happened. The ownership hasn't all gone clear yet.
Okay.
So they want to remain open under this ownership while that is what we're going through.
Okay. All right.
So it didn't die, it's just a snag.
It's paused.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, so after we take a vote to approve this renewal, you want us to make a motion to repeal the
Yes.
new liquor? Okay. All right. Yes, Mark?
Just a further question.
Yeah.
It seems kind of odd to me that someone that, if the sale didn't go through, it almost seems that, it was premature that the applicant claimed to be 100% owner. And that was the information presented to you folks. And that license was that you wish approved was gonna be effective on June 22nd. That's the first time I've witnessed that, but I'm just wondering if you think there should be some type of other steps in the process to keep that from happening.
Yeah, I'll see if Ethna has a follow-up comment.
My only comment is that we don't actually approve liquor licenses. That's not our job to do.
This is
All
state.
this is a state approved. All they're doing is coming to us and saying that we, the undersigned, certify that we've gone through the process of 28A MR. So perhaps we need to refresh our process and understand that 28A MRSA section 653 better, so that we are complying with what we're saying we're complying with in order to move this to the state, because we don't actually issue the liquor license.
Right.
The state
I
does.
realize that, but I just,
So we haven't, even the person that we
this part of the
said,
process.
right, even the person that we said on June 22nd, that didn't give them a liquor license. All that said was, we as the municipal officers comply with
Supported
what
them
we
being
were
issued
supposed
one
to.
by the state.
Right. Yeah, and the fire chief, the
Right.
police officer sign off, it's,
Right, that's all us.
okay.
And that's probably why they're back here again, because that didn't go through because of whatever the process they're having. So
Right,
Portage is now, it's time's taken, so they need to.
yeah,
they need to make sure
They need
that
to renew
right.
right.
Hence the renewal question that I had at the beginning. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't we just do this?
Yeah,
I wasn't here for that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark.
Good question.
Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous. All right, so we need a motion to repeal the new liquor license request that was granted in June of 2022. All right, that's my, I'll make the motion. All right, so my motion is that the Board of Selectmen are voting to repeal the new liquor license application request that was granted at our June 2022 meeting.
Second.
You were there for that one, I wasn't there for that one.
I was there for that. And then I just want to follow up with a comment that
Yes.
I almost think that this is kind of a moot point because we didn't approve a liquor license.
Right, yeah.
And I am going to research what this means that we are saying we complied with when we say,
Yeah.
yeah, we approved the liquor
That's
license.
what it would say, exactly.
All right, any further discussion on the current motion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. All right, we have an event permit application for the Trail Town Festival.
Make a motion to approve the Haley Pond Park Trail Town Festival. Date of event Saturday, September 3rd, rain date none, event time 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pending certificate of liability.
Ethna's motion,
Second.
Sam seconds. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We've got the Western Mountain Shrine Club event permit application for a parade.
I motion to permit the Western Mountain Shiners Parade happening on August 13th, no rain date, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Sam's motion,
Second.
Ethna seconds. Any questions or comments? Yes.
I was just gonna say, can we throw in the pending certificate of liability? But Sam amended her motion and I will second her amendment.
All right, any further questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We've got the Rangeley Boosters event permit application.
Motion for the event permit of the Rangeley Boosters Festival in the town park, Blueberry Festival, and that is happening on 8/18 from 6 to 5.
All right, Sam's motion,
Second,
and Ethna seconds. I think we've got,
6 AM to 5 PM.
No, right?
I just want to verify. I don't see AM or PM anywhere, and since we can't go the other way on the clock, I assume that's 6 AM to 5 PM for the Blueberry
Means like
Festival.
it's
probably
set up.
Probably for setup.
Yeah, they probably get going at 8, 9.
and the park commission is signed off, Jim Massey, so we're good with that step. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. And then a follow-up, the Rangeley Boosters have submitted an application for a vendor's license.
I motion the application for the Rangeley Boosters vendor's license. Now you guys see a date.
Just for any of their ones.
Yeah.
Second, sorry.
Sam's motion and Ethna's seconds. Any questions or comments on the vendor's application? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Moving on to requests for appointment, the ordinance committee. So Nancy Douglas was presented for us to consider for the ordinance committee at our last meeting, and what Joe looked into was that a member of the ordinance committee's term expired June 30th, and he is not submitting a request for appointment to the ordinance committee, so he has expired. So looking for a motion to approve this request.
Motion to approve the appointment of Nancy Douglas for a 3-year term to the ordinance committee. Term to expire on 6/30/2025, sorry.
I'm sorry. Ethna's motion,
Second.
Sam seconds. And we thank Nancy for stepping up. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We've got our request for reappointment to the Airport Commission.
Motion to request reappointment for Larry Coop, the airport.
So Sam's motion
Second.
and Ethna's seconds.
Expires 6/30/2025.
So Sam amends her motion to include the expiration of 6/30/2025.
Second that.
So, just my personal, I don't like these requests for reappointment pages. This is the second time that we've seen them, and they don't have any information on them. And what this request for appointment, it identifies, please explain why you would be the best candidate for the position if there were multiple candidates to choose from. So it doesn't allow a request for reappointment for them to answer that, nor describe any potential, personal conflicts, which is also this request for appointment asks for. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, that's just my personal opinion. I mean,
I'm of the opinion that the request for reappointment should at least maintain a portion of the request for appointment in the case that we end up with more than one applicant. I mean, being on the committee doesn't guarantee reappointment if there's more than one applicant.
right,
If there's somebody who applies who's better positioned to be on it, we need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So if the person requesting reappointment really wants to be on it, we need to be aware why.
Sam, you agree? So,
I mean, nobody's better than Larry, let's be honest.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
make that note.
Yeah. yeah, well, the first time we saw this request for reappointment was for the planning board, where there were multiple applicants, and the person was present, and I gave him the opportunity to say, and I pointed out, I'm like, this form doesn't have any information. And could you please explain, and so he got the opportunity. So Joe, all present.
Yep.
Okay, so that's, any discussion on Larry's request? Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. All right. Moving on to Maine DOT LRAP funds. I will turn this over to Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is something that happens every year. This state of Maine DOT has a formula that they use based on the number of miles of public road that we have in town. And then they have some other factors that go into it on their end. But basically, they come up with a sum of money that they grant us each year for capital improvements. So it's not money that comes back to us that's used to plow roads or things like that. There's a very specific list of things that the money can be used for. Overlays, reconstruction, gravel road, grade raising or paving, et cetera. The sheet there if you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And we're required to show what we used capital money for in the previous year, which we've done. And one of the things that Keith and I learned, the easiest way to handle it is to find one project that covers last year's amount. That way you don't have to, parcel it out into 3 different things. So Loon Lake Road easily covers that at $1.6 million. So they just asked us to demonstrate that we've used the money for its intended purpose. And they're letting us know what the anticipated amount is for this year, which is, just saw it, $31,724 coming December 1.
All right.
And that's for the fiscal year beginning July, this fiscal year.
All right, thank you, Joe. So Joe is requesting a motion to authorize town manager to sign.
Motion to authorize the town manager to sign the Maine DOT Local Road Assistance Program certification for fiscal year 23.
Etham's motion,
Second.
Sam seconds. Any further questions or comments?
That didn't need an amount anywhere, right?
No.
All the amounts are for DOT purposes or us to know what we're doing. Perfect.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. That wraps up consent items. We do have correspondence. The correspondence is regarding 35 Hotel Road. At our last meeting, we discussed, our previous meeting, we had Gary Shamshoyan's attorney zooming in, requesting a contract to be worked out, a repayment agreement to bring Mr. Shamshoyan's taxes current. So we have correspondence from John Cooper, Gary Priest, and Susanna Goodwin. And I'm not going to read them. Normally we do, but there is there's some judgment in here that we're just better off not reading aloud. So, but they are asking us to consider not entering into an agreement, a repayment agreement with Mr. Shamshoyan, and just allowing the foreclosure to carry through and with the town ultimately owning the property. So everything is still in the works. Joe, you said the attorneys are.
Yes, Madam Chair. Yeah, the attorneys are still working on a draft agreement. Just to clarify, the foreclosure has gone through. The town does own it currently, and the town is. The board is contemplating is negotiating with the party that you mentioned. The attorneys are working on it. Last time I checked in, they were talking about interest rates, what would be a reasonable interest rate. But I did share with our attorney the criteria that you laid out in your last meeting about wanting to capture any and all fees, and if there were to fall, the town would keep any of that money and so forth. So our attorney knows that. Those two attorneys are going back and forth, but looks like they're going to need a little bit more time. So it'll be probably your next meeting when it comes back.
Okay. Yes, no.
I did want to, first of all, say thank you so much to folks who offer us correspondence. I know that's not always an easy thing to do, is to approach people with your concerns. However, I do feel that it's necessary to make a comment of my own, and that's that as the Board of Selectmen, we cannot take the position of getting involved in or basing our decisions on neighbor disputes. Those are civil matters and must be handled as such. We cannot get involved in those. Having said that, do we have a tax acquired property policy as a board? Have we ever addressed that policy?
Not to my knowledge, Madam Chair.
Can we, since we're dealing with policies and we're gonna look at, can we,
Yeah.
just so that
Sure.
there's something in play, because right now we're all kind of sitting on, well, this is what we've done in the past, this is how we've handled it in the past. And I almost think if we have a policy, we can say, this is what we follow, and this is why we've chosen to do that.
Mhm.
I second.
No, that's a great suggestion. We're going to have pretty clarity, just see what's missing, you know, with our policies and what, you know, what needs tweaking. So Joe looks like he's in the process of adding it to the list.
Yes.
Thanks, Joe. And then I did notice that MMA does caution against installment payments, but I assume where we have two attorneys involved, that they will vigorously address any of those concerns with installment payments and make sure that everybody's covered on both sides of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you.
thank you. All right, so we'll move on into old business. And the Daigle and Houghton chassis build update. Joe?
Madam Chair, thank you. So last time we met, I think Jason was with us and he explained to us the mandatory surcharges that are coming from corporate international to their dealers. So I was tasked with double checking all the paperwork and the purchase order. There's not a signed copy on this end or on the other end. And as I recall, what happened where we left it off was we were looking at the warranties and then we didn't get it signed. So that's the truth. The second part of it is, I've asked this question point blank to Jason, you know, if it were signed, would we still be faced with the surcharge? And the answer is yes. His answer was, because it wasn't in your RFP, because you didn't put it out that way, we still would put the surcharge, be putting the surcharge on the bill. So I don't want to lose our place in line for the truck. I mean, we're going to have to go all the way back out through the process. So that's my update on that, just so you know. And the line set ticket, the truck is planned to be built on the 18th, which is a few weeks away, a couple weeks away.
Well, I think, yeah, go ahead, Sam.
So it's my understanding that we had an agreement with them once before, but then prices went up, right? Or their surcharge, everything got increased now with the prices of steel. Now did our trade-in go, is that possible to go up?
We asked that question too, and they, believe it or not, said no.
No, just-
It's a very good question.
It is.
Yeah.
We did ask that.
If the price of it, I mean, everything's going up. I mean, trade-ins are crazy valuable right now, so no, that was possible to
Yeah,
renegotiate.
no, it's a very good question.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you basically, you know, you've answered the questions, you know, whether the RFP specifically stated there will be no surcharges allowed, because that would, and basically, if we don't agree to pay the surcharges, then another town gets the truck
Right,
and
whoever's next in line.
whoever's next in line
So
and
they'll kill this sale if we don't agree to this surcharge.
That's what they've said, yeah.
And you figure, you know, if we go back out for an RFP, it's gonna include these higher amounts anyway.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Right.
And, okay,
So one of the learning lesson that I'll share with the board and the public
that's always good.
is that when this happened, I said, you know, we've got to make sure that we have this language in any future RFPs that go out. or any equipment or anything like that, because that had never, it's one of the things that COVID did was now this had to happen, but they're more comfortable, people are comfortable doing that. The time that went by, I guess is really what happened. So years ago, not to get too far in the weeds, but when I was buying plow trucks 15 years ago, there was a 3-month turnaround.
Right.
Like the longest part was getting money from town meeting, and then you ordered it, and in 2, maybe 3 months, it was built, put together, and showed up. Now it's been over a year.
Yeah.
Well over a year, maybe not quite a year and a half, it's been a long time, so. It means that markets are volatile and, you know, the learning lesson is that we've talked about making sure this is in our RFPs going forward. It was not anything we thought about in the years past, so. So there is a takeaway, Madam Chair, for us.
And so what is that increase again, Joe? What are we looking at for?
I believe it's 5,200. There's a tire. 5,500 is what I have. Do you have a different number?
No, I was just going to recall, I thought they said 5,800 at the last meeting.
So I just have a really, so what is the turnaround time now on this truck? When are we looking at getting this truck?
So it'll be built at the factory. The chassis will be built, or scheduled to be built, August 18th. Then it comes back to New England, or comes to New England, and it gets the plow gear put on it, the body and all those things. And what Jason had told us, I believe, was December or early January for it to be brought here.
So I'm gonna ask, only because I feel like I have to, are we going to incur any additional surcharges between now and then? Since that's a whole nother 6 months out before we get the truck. Have they indicated that these are the only surcharges we're gonna see?
Very good question. They have not indicated to me any other surcharges
Okay.
besides these that are here.
Well, make sure you lock that in.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Let's make sure we don't.
Oh, yeah. Let me, and I'll reach back out to Jason, I'll follow up with him, let him know that, I've explained it to you in more detail. That was your question. Okay. I just didn't want this to be a surprise, Madam Chair, when the invoice came in.
Right.
And what is the surcharge?
Yeah.
What is this? I wanted you to know about it as soon as I knew about it. So.
You don't need us to take any action, do you? Or do you want us to?
You could make a motion to, increase the amount, the bottom line amount on the sales order to include, or not to exceed, 184, 199. That way if it is 5,800, I don't have my math in front of me. It's either 55 or 58.
What was that amount again, Joe? 184?
Yeah, it'd be 180. Or 199. Check. Yeah, 184, 199, not to exceed. I had 6,000 of that.
We just need a motion to increase the Daigle and Bolton sales order to not to exceed $184,199.
And authorize the town manager to sign.
And authorize the town manager to sign.
Ethna's motion.
With no additional surcharges.
And Sam seconds. Any more discussion or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Fire Department, Engine 3 lease purchase update. Go ahead,
Madam-
Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I put the payment schedule in your binders just so you can take a look at it. We were able to beat actually the lower one by a little bit, the lowest one from last time, by a few dollars. And there is an early termination purchase option all the way over in the right-hand column. So after 12 months, we can pay it off early if we decide to. So the only other caveat with this is it's at legal for review. They don't require a full-blown bond counsel, but there's a one page that says, it's a bunch of checkboxes. Legal has reviewed this. That person that does it is on vacation, or was on vacation last week, she'll be back this week. So as soon as that has been reviewed, and they'll review the rest of the document too, but that requires, check off the signature. Once that's done, I'll sign that and this will be good to go. So we were able to get to eliminate the balloon payment at the end, and it was 7 equal terms, which saved the town over $7,000.
That's great.
It is. Yep. So no action required there. You already authorized them to sign. I just want to give you an update.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And a thank you to Shelley for
Yes.
putting it out there. Personnel policy update regarding Juneteenth and Maine PERS. This is the second reading. That last sentence on this page has been struck as we discussed previous meeting.
Was there any motion that we've done the second reading? Or it's just kind of process, right?
The second reading is we're having a bit of a brain cramp.
Okay.
Is this the adoption?
Yes.
Okay.
Stand by and I'll refer to the policy. After a subsequent regular meeting, at least 2 weeks and less than 5 weeks after the first reading, which was your last meeting, policy shall be placed on the agenda for a second reading and action.
Okay.
Amendments may be introduced and acted upon. If the motion to approve the policy is not passed at such reading by a majority of the board, the process for that policy is ended. So at this meeting, which is the subsequent to the last one, you have the opportunity still to amend, and then you can approve or deny second reading. And approving it will put it into effect at whatever date you choose to put it into effect. That will pick tomorrow.
Right. Are there any recommended corrections? Okay.
Comfortable making a motion on both, but do we want it, one for each article, as it is separate articles?
Wouldn't be bad housekeeping, too.
I make a motion to approve the amendment to Article 8 holiday to include item 6 Juneteenth, effective August 2nd.
Oh.
Tomorrow, right? We want it effective tomorrow, or it can be effective tonight, can it?
It can.
Yeah, so August 1st.
All right, Ethna's motion. Second. Sam seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
I will make a motion to approve the amendments to the Personnel Policy Article 13 to include Maine PERS language.
Ethna's motion. Second. And Sam seconds. Any further discussion on Article 13? All those in favor? All right, septic sludge licensing update. We've got
Madam Chair, could
yes.
interrupt just for a
Oh, I'm
moment?
sorry, we forgot to discuss the
Would it be, now that the board has enacted or adopted this policy, I would like to have authority to pick a day that works operationally for folks to celebrate Juneteenth in this fiscal year, which we've already gone by. So I'd like authorization to do that retrospective. And I would I would recommend or suggest that that day be a floating day for employees. That way, it might be more flexible for them.
Mhm.
But I'd like authorization from you to be able to grant that holiday retroactively for this fiscal year.
All right, that sounds reasonable, the floating, especially the floating holiday aspect, so it, makes things operationally easier all around and a greater flexibility for the employees. So looking for a motion to approve a floating holiday in the current fiscal year for the absence of Juneteenth in the prior fiscal year. Actually, that's the motion.
That's the motion, yeah. And second.
Okay. Sam seconded. Any further discussion? Yes, Ethna.
Sorry, I just have a quick question, because I did ask at the last meeting if this was going to be retroactive, and I feel like that was a decision that we knew was going to happen. Did you know at the last meeting that when we approved this, you would be asking for it retroactive? Or was that a decision you made recently? And I'm so sorry to kind of just say it like that, but I asked at a previous meeting if we were going to do it retro for this fiscal year, and I was under the understanding we were not. Not that I begrudge anybody an extra day, and I just recall asking if we were going to do it retro, and I was told, nope, these are from the day we vote them in.
And so not having a day at all, or?
Yeah, that, I'm recalling a bit of that.
Okay. All right, so no big deal, but if that's future from here forward, is these are, any amendments we make are effective as of the date of the amendment.
Yeah.
And not intended to be retro decisions.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
Are you recalling,
I do recall
I
the
do
question now.
recall.
I didn't understand the context at the time, so.
yeah,
No problem.
So to answer that question, I did
No.
not.
Yeah.
Did not think about making this retroactive until probably the last week or so.
Perfect, thank you.
it was presented from a select board member to be retroactive when, when Selectman Schaefer brought it, he had kind of introduced that retroactive intent and kind of set that tone.
And I do like the idea of the floating day, Joe. That's a good.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, and that's unanimous. All right, okay, now septic sludge licensing update. So Joe's presented an email, kind of a final confirmation that well, Joe, I'll just have you comment on the email.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. So as you recall, as the board recalls, there were two kind of prongs of DEP at the sewer treatment plant. One is the spray field, that's where all of the municipal waste that's generated, collected here, wastewater, I should say, goes and is sprayed. The other license or prong, if you will, from the DEP has to do with land applied septic sludge. And that's the stuff that's pumped out of homeowner septic tanks, business septic tanks, literally trucked up and then spread in a certain cordoned off area of the plant, or was until this year. That used to be a 5-year permit process, and then it shrunk to 2. And the application, I'll read right from the email, because the application submitted by Rangeley is considered a request for approval of a new license, they're unable to process it based on recent legislation. And this all relates to PFAS, basically. It won't be processed. Now we know that that's a final determination on that prong of the process of the plan. We do have, still exploring or working on the frac tank possibility. And that's something I'll continue to work on. And that would be, instead of spreading it there, it would really be parked there and then transferred somewhere else. By parked, I mean stored in an above ground tank. That's the update. I just wanted to close the loop on the fact that that application will not be processed.
Okay. Any questions for Joe? Yes, Ethna.
It's not a question, it's a comment. How in God's name did we end up in the new category when we've had this license for years? I get that we were delayed in submitting, but that didn't make us new. It was still a reapplication.
Kind of
So
the way I feel about it too, Madam
How did
Chair,
the
but
state make this determination that we were new?
it's the new legislation that came through. They're really tightening the belt on land application of sludge. And that's the short answer to the question. But I asked the same question in my office, like, what, how are we not new? I mean, how are we new? I know this has been doing this forever. And the, I don't want to speak out of school, but I think the folks, some folks felt the same way, but the legislature felt differently. So, that's the update.
Thank you, Joe. That finishes up old business, and we move into new business and salary survey criteria. And Joe has placed the wage adjustments policy, Article 21, in our binders. And let's see here. So in Joe's notes, he is trying to comply with the policy. The salary survey that was presented last year did not meet with select board, a general consensus. So Joe, looks like you're looking for town recommendations, because at this point, the Article 21 still incorporates a salary survey scale, of which we don't have one that that the board has approved. So Joe is looking for, just, to email a couple of towns that you think would be good comparables to the town of Rangeley. And that way we can, Joe can work on compiling, we'll probably have a discussion and a consensus.
Right.
Once those towns come in, it'll be an agenda item, and, preferably sooner as opposed to later, so that we can have some, productive discussion on it.
That way, Madam Chair, we can, if I could,
Yeah.
capture all of the elements that you want to see, the benefits, the working hours, titles and positions, those types of things. I think if each board member could have 2 or 3 towns, that would make a good sample size of 10 or 15.
Okay. So the other, one thing that Selectman Lowell had brought up was, we had briefly touched on each position having a salary scale. And I think, again, there wasn't a vote, there was like a general consensus that it's a common thing. I mean, the state has it, a lot of public employee positions have that scale. So I don't know where that would enter in.
Madam Chair, that may be an element to consider plugging in Article 21 as you look at that, maybe down the road or now, or at some point when it works, we plug in the scale. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah.
Would be easier to budget for and easier to administer, and it would be easier on the employee to know
Mhm.
5, 7, 10 years what
Right.
it looks like. It may take some of the challenge out of it. The
Right,
challenge will be building it on the front end, making sure it works. But,
right,
I think long-term, that's the type of thought that I want to demonstrate that we're putting into this.
mhm.
That's all.
Any questions? Yes, Ethna?
I just want to follow up, and go on record again, saying I've asked for us to review this.
So,
Are we sitting on all of our policies until we get feedback from the attorney that we should be addressing them, or, I mean, these are the Board of Selectmen's policies, correct? And I asked back in, don't quote me, somebody check the record, back in the beginning of March maybe, that we addressed this policy.
yeah, I mean, we certainly, it can be an agenda item, it can be, something that the attorney looks at. I mean, any board member can add an item to the agenda. It's, at any point. So is this, I mean, there are a couple different things, Ethna, we could, we could have Annalee take a look, we could have the attorney take a look and question, I mean, this seems to, time-wise, I mean, there are some policies that, needed immediate addressing, like the main PERS and Juneteenth, so we've looked at that. With this Article 21 coming up, we could certainly have it as an agenda item and also have the attorney take a look. I mean, we already have policies that they need to look at. I don't remember which article, but it's the one that related to utilities and the superior courts, the ambiguity there with the Sir Royce
Yeah, I think
lawsuit.
that one was covered under chapter 38. I think that one was
Okay,
under the appeals
okay,
portion of that. So I think they've cleared that one up in the latest version of it.
And my only concern with this is because it is such a difficult thing for us to execute.
right,
It's such a difficult thing for us to give you directive on what our expectations are, and then for it to be executed because of the language and how poorly structured it is. I mean, it says salary survey scale. That's salary survey and a salary scale are two different things. It's already in conflict of itself in that single 3 word, in those 3 words. It's just, it's such a difficult thing over the years to execute well. And it makes sense for all of us to understand how we're basing. And most importantly, the employees, the poor people who are trying to figure out their future finances need to know how their positions and what their years of service are going to earn them. I mean, it needs to be addressed, it needs to be looked at, and I love that you're looking this far in advance at it. But my concern is, we're still using this same language that's gonna turn into a mucky, mud-mired disaster that everybody's gonna be mad at everybody for basing their decisions on how we interpret it. If we take out some of the interpretation and make it clear for all of us.
Yeah.
So
that's my concern with this policy, just so it's clear why it is.
Madam Chair, I can bring back some information from, our consultant, who's the attorney.
Yeah.
I have some of those things already, but I can get some more. We can work on that. I still think it may be worthwhile just to think about towns that you think we're similar to, because at some point, we're gonna have to have a benchmark
right,
that you're basing your scales on. Something that you're comfortable with, something that you can defend to your constituents. So I think it'd be worthwhile to think about those towns. Or Sometimes I've seen policies that say, look at the town as, and or private businesses in your area. I think Elliott had a policy like that. Basically, not everybody's gonna go to another town, so maybe they go to a business, that's nearby that meets their skill set, so. The biggest thing is that we're talking about it.
Right.
And we're trying to figure out how to make something work that you can give to me and I can implement and it works. So,
And maybe there's a wonderful policy that another town has that
awesome.
is, that we can look at as well and not, dissect this, because I mean, yeah, Selectman Thompson makes an excellent point. Salary, survey, scale.
It's two different things in 3 words.
Yeah.
We'll bring back some information.
Okay, super. Thank you for bringing it up. Next item under new business is the RFP for crack sealant. And Joe, we've got 2 bids.
Yes. Madam Chair, we had Pro Steel, 47.70 a gallon. They figured it'd take 530 gallons, and then we had Coastal Road Repair, whom we worked with recently, $19 a gallon. All they require is a 300 gallon minimum per shift, so that's where they got to hit that number to make it worth it for them to come up. I don't think they're gonna have any problem doing that. We have in this budget, we have 20,000 to work with, and the roads. Yes, they're gonna begin, so everybody knows the plan is to begin on Pleasant Street, work this way down Fawcett, down Allen Street. I don't think Cross Street is on the list, but I'm gonna talk with my folks about maybe putting that on and then going from there. So Coastal is the lower bidder, they're a qualified bidder, we've worked with them before. Long story.
Are they though? I mean, with it per shift, needing to do the 300, like what is the per shift? That's what I'm confused about when it says that both of them are given the estimated budget of $20,000, right? But then what's the better sealant and what's the per shift is my concern, I guess.
Good question, Madam Chair. So they both spec the same product. Which is in the RFP.
I couldn't find with their product, but I was concerned on his little write-up of saying 300 gal per shift. And then not having, and then the Pro Seal seeming more efficient. Granted, the price, it just looks like they're gonna be using more down the long run.
So it's ASTM David's /6690/4 interior. Or the equivalent. The question about per shift, so the shift is a day.
Okay.
So 300 gallons is what they have to put out in that day. The price is what we really need to look at. So the price, the unit price,
Right, it's clearly a difference.
it's clearly.
Clearly a huge difference, but it's like, who's saying what, how many shifts, I mean, how, who's gonna be more efficient? Is that what I'm looking at with the shift?
Very good question. So what I see here, Madam Chair, use my calculator. I think that's $20,000. Yeah, I think what's happened is one bidder has taken what they know. Let me back up a little bit. With crack sealing, I learned a long time ago, it's easier to approach this by telling the contractor what you have to work with, as opposed to trying to figure out linear, because the only other way is for them to go out, somebody to go out and measure linear cracks, which is, you don't really know. I mean, you can estimate. But if you ask them to estimate, or if you estimate, you don't really know what you're going to get. You don't know how far you go, there's some cracks. What we do in this case is we say, here's what we have to work with, here's the $20,000, here's the roads we want to get done. What, if we were going to have you, whatever's on that list or whatever you're gonna spend, the entire amount of money, how much per gallon would it cost? And they're saying, you don't have to spend the whole $20,000, we just need to come for 300 gallons.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
So 300 times, that's about $6,000-ish.
Okay.
So they can almost do, they can do 3 days.
Okay.
But we're not paying by the day, they just have to come. It complicates it a little bit. It's a better deal. Coastal road repair is a better deal, long story short. But it's a very good question, and these are, it's even more complicated by the foot in my mind. This is an easier way to do it. Yeah. But the unit price is really what you want to look at.
And you've used them before, so that's okay.
Yeah, we've had good luck, they've held up well, been responsive,
Mhm.
so. I do recommend Coastal Road Repair. ProSeal's good company too.
Yeah.
We work with them also. But the unit price is over twice. What the other is.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we need a motion. To award the bid to Coastal Road Repair. If you're so inclined.
I make a motion to award the crack sealing services bid to Coastal Road Repair based on both the town manager's recommendation and the fact that they are the lowest bid submission.
Beth's motion.
Second.
And Sam seconds. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Yep,
No.
all right, questions, Joe. So I think I understand the whole 300 gallons per shift minimum. Who is it incumbent upon meeting that? I mean, are they saying they can meet a 300 gallon dispense per their shift? They're certain of that?
Yes, they're saying, yes, they can match the 300 gallons per minute, but they expect that we're going to commit to doing at least 300 gallons for each day that we have.
For each day that they're here.
Right.
Okay,
And once they get on the ground, like, they'll look at it closely and say, okay, we can do this, and rather than stay here an hour tomorrow, we'll break that. You know what I mean? Because they're,
so have they given any indication what the price is per gallon, should that not be able to be met? And I only say that based on the fact that the other bidder estimated 530 gallons was all we needed, so we're not gonna hit 600 gallons. Which it says their requirement is 300 gallons per shift minimum. Sorry, I just had to,
No,
the more I looked at it, but I'm like, wait a minute.
it's a good observation.
Okay.
I think what happened was the known quantity was divided out by the,
Yeah, so the 530 gallons, anything more would exceed the $20,000 that we had
So
budgeted.
they based their estimate strictly on the $20,000 budget. It had nothing to do with what they actually thought we were going to need for seal.
I can't confirm that, just.
Okay. Just wanted to double check.
All right. So we got a motion and a second. Any further questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous for Coastal Road Repair. That's it for new business. We move on to town manager report, department head updates. We've got Rangeley Fire Rescue. We've got the code enforcement officer. And one thing to point out in the code enforcement officer's notes is just a little bit of elaboration on what the planning board wanted the board of selectmen to consider for chapter 38. changes or for us to consider some comments here. So you might want to keep this one. So you have that to look at when we discuss chapter 38.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there's actually a brand new hot off the press version of chapter 38 that has those items in it.
Okay,
They're really put together for this afternoon.
all
I
right.
think they're in agreement.
They are in green. Okay, so these changes are in green.
Thank you, Bailey, for putting that together.
Absolutely. All right. All right, so I'll grab the other two and make sure they get there. They get their copies.
Question.
Yes, Mark.
On the department head updates on Ramsey Fire and Rescue, a few meetings back, the selectman asked that the vehicle that responded be mentioned, and they were at the last group update, but I don't see it on this one. Has something changed?
No, they're supposed to include the vehicles in the list.
I'll check into that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, I shouldn't have. Are there any other questions or comments regarding Region Fire Rescue? All right, code enforcement and Region PD. Joe has a staffing update.
I do, Madam Chair. So I have, since you last met, I've received letters of resignation from Public Service Director and Code Enforcement Officer. I have begun to think about the best ways to fill those positions. I've looked at our staff policy. Code enforcement is a required position by statute, so most likely we're going to post that right away. I'm going to explore Public Services Director position a little bit. I intend to post that once I've looked at that a little bit. Regret to receive both of those resignations. But I wish everybody the best. I just wanted you to be aware of that in case you have questions, folks around town, and to let you know that I'm looking at that, both of those positions in keeping with staffing policy. And they will, as is common practice, I've requested that exit interviews be conducted. So I'll keep you in the loop going forward.
When are their last days?
One is Friday and one is next Tuesday. And I want to thank them both for what they've done for the town. Really bright folks.
Yeah, well, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen as well, thank them for all they've done and their hard work. All right. Yes, Mark.
In regards to the code enforcement officer, the town did hire an assistant code enforcement officer. So will that person be able to provide some temporary filling of the position so that it's, because it takes a while to hire a code enforcement officer. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be a complete void or if there's going to be some temporary measure.
Excellent question, Madam Chair, if I could answer that.
Yes, please.
Thank you for bringing that up. So the answer to the question is we do have a deputy code enforcement officer who is aware of the situation and works full-time elsewhere, but is willing to put time in to help us out. when he can, a day or two a week, evenings and so forth. So it won't be a complete void, no.
Could I have a clarification on the last day of work question that was asked? Which one is which? One's done on, which one is done this
So
Friday?
public services director, last day according to the document I got is Friday, and code enforcement next last day is next Tuesday.
So next Tuesday is the 9th?
Yes.
Okay. And this Friday is what day?
The fifth.
The fifth?
The 5th?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to calendar. Looks like, Joe, did we already schedule this August 8th meeting? No, this is
I don't believe so.
proposed.
Yeah, no, this is proposed.
All right.
And this is when the planning started.
Go ahead.
Planning board will be conducting a public hearing. We'd like you to be there, they'd like you to be there as the board to be present to hear what's said and provide input also.
I have a conflict that night, but I can certainly if we're just, I mean, it's not our hearing, so the board would not be, there to comment or to vote, just to listen.
I have a conflict.
Okay. All right, I will let the other two board members know.
And Madam Chair, it's not a requirement that the board of selectmen
Right.
is present at this. The intent was that because of the tight, doesn't seem like the tight turnaround, but it kind of is from November, second Tuesday in November back. In order to meet all those deadlines, this was the time that worked. So if the board can, the select board can receive the information from the planning board and then provide any input from the members that are present, that would suffice. And then there'll be another public hearing. If the process moves forward, if you move forward, there would be another required referendum public hearing sometime later in August, I believe. Yeah, the last possible date would be the 31st.
All right, so, and that's under, so the monthly financials, so we'll segue into other business. Monthly financials have been emailed out. So the Chapter 38 timeline is, we've got a proposed timeline in front of us. And I did have a comment from one of the selectmen that they feel it's a lot to ask for the month of August. But is there a reason for the November 8th date and not just at regular town meeting?
That's entirely up to the board. I was under the impression recently that we were interested in having this go to referendum in November and also put on like a moratorium ordinance, some other ordinances that are big work on.
I think it was suggested, it was suggested by the code enforcement officer, I think. But so what would need to happen? So Sam, this Chapter 38 is this, okay? Yeah. And so what you got at the last meeting were, you got a printout of this as well as attorney notations. And so the Board of Selectmen provide the final draft for vote. We take into consideration, whatever the attorney says we need to have in there, but per main law, then that's that. The planning board sounds like they've recommended some changes for us to consider. But I did ask the board to review to make sure that all of our changes were, were incorporated into the document. And I guess we probably need a meeting to discuss that and review it ourselves. But with two board members absent tonight,
Meeting next week.
yeah, and the planning board, they are required to have their own public hearing. After we finalize the document, maybe this is good as is. We won't know though until we discuss it. Then we need to have a public hearing, and then and so all of this as presented would need to happen by August 31st. It's going to go on November ballot.
Madam Chair, if I could, the benefit to the board of selectmen being present at this public hearing is if there are any substantive questions that the planning board may, at that public hearing, say, okay, we'll change what we're presenting to you. It's really intended to make some type of consensus, yeah. Otherwise, it could volley back and forth for some period of time, which it could be inclined to do. So that's why it's good to have at least some of the board members in the room to say, about this, can we come to some type of consensus?
Availability for meetings. So Sam, just thinking, ahead to this month, which days of the week are absolutely out of you cannot, you cannot schedule.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Friday.
Wednesday, I'm pretty flexible. Tuesday, Saturday.
And Ethna, thoughts on the presented timeline and your availability?
My only concern is we could get into dangerous territory when we start pushing stuff. And I don't know the rush to get this on November instead of waiting until annual town meeting. If there's a rush for a particular reason, I would love to hear it. I would love to understand why we're so worried about changing it. But that's my concern.
Yeah.
Is the rush. It feels rushed. And every time we feel rushed, we miss something. Just don't want to miss something because there's been an extensive amount of work put into this chapter.
Selectman Lowell voiced the same concern. I didn't have a chance to talk with Selectman Schaefer about it. So let me, Ethna, what days of the week are out for you?
I don't think I really have any that are out except for first and third Wednesdays have potential to conflict with ordinance if we're having. If we're not having on the first Wednesday of this month, we're having it the 3rd.
Okay.
So that's the 17th, I think. That's not the correct calendar. Can we get an updated calendar?
All right, so Joe, let me communicate with the other two board members and then I'll circle back around for to share the information individually. I'll give each of you a call, and but it would be good for for a couple of board members to be present at that Monday meeting here.
Yeah, and to that point, if it turns out that only two can make it, well, that's okay. But on the reason that it's important, and Tracy and I put this on the agenda for you to think about, was that if 3 of you can make it and decide to go, that needs to be announced ahead of time. I wouldn't want to have the board show up and have a meeting and have it not be posted. So on the side of caution, just to be safe, if you can schedule that meeting, that way if 3 of you can make it, even for part of the meeting,
Right.
that way we haven't violated sunshine law.
Yeah, I think when the planning board was present here, for that first meeting in July, they had posted that there would be a potential quorum at our scheduled Board of Selectmen's meeting. So if you feel comfortable in posting something like that,
Sure.
by all means.
Okay.
All right, so we'll revisit the chapter 38 timeline after I touch base with the other two selectmen. We've got the main infrastructure fund. And Joe, I'll have you comment on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a grant that we applied for, but were not successful in receiving. This is one that had a high amount. I think we were going to match $10,000 and expect to get up to $200,000 back. Didn't work out. I can't win them all.
That's right.
Just want to close the loop with you on that.
Okay. Thank you. And we were handed out, thank Tracy for printing out the current seated members of the town boards and committees. So please keep these on hand. And I'll get those to our other two board members. So Joe, regarding the budget committee roster, the write-ins from town meeting, when do those get? I mean, I know it's not budget committee season at this point, but there were right, you know, there's the availability to write in. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
We'll check that out. It should be filled in shortly.
All right. Any comments or questions on the current board and committee seats? We do, oh, sorry, select board communication. Any info to share? Ethna? Sam? I've got nothing too. Motion, we don't have an executive session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second.
Was that a so moved? Was that a?
All right.
Working on it.
All right. Sam's motion, Ethna seconds. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.